Sounds kind of insurrection-y to me. I don't know about you. Joining us now to discuss all of this is Rob Law. He's a Homeland Security and Immigration Director at the America First Policy Institute and a former senior policy advisor to President Trump. Rob, good to have you with us, sir.
Good to be with you this afternoon.
It's not every day that you have a city mayor promise to use both the local cops as well as the civilian population to physically stop the federal government from enforcing the law. What am I to make of this?
I think the mayor is auditioning for higher office. He's just trying to placate the progressive left of this country. This is just complete puffery. It's absurd. Let's be clear about what sanctuary cities are. They are jurisdictions that protect dangerous criminal aliens. And so with all due respect to the mayor, I don't think that the people of Denver, who are the victims, they are the direct victims of illegal alien crime, are going to be protecting their abusers, those predators. I don't think that that's going to happen. And so he can refuse to cooperate, as distasteful as that is, but he absolutely cannot obstruct the federal government from implementing federal policy. And that is exactly what immigration enforcement is. It is the prerogative of the federal government through the Donald Trump administration to enforce the law. And he's going to probably find himself behind a jail cell if he tries to obstruct ICE and those that are assisting ICE in that mission. And again, this is about, you're really going to be the champion of dangerous criminal aliens? I mean, it is incredibly extreme. And if you're a resident of Denver, you might be second guessing why it is you'd want to remain a resident there.
So we heard Tom Homan say recently that not only is he going to double the personnel involved in going into some of these sanctuary cities in order to make sure that the law is enforced, he also warned that sanctuary city Democrats could be prosecuted for violating federal law when it comes to basically aiding, abetting, and harboring illegal aliens. This seems like an area of the law that maybe we should use a little bit more when going after these sanctuary cities.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. All authorities need to be looked at because during the first Trump administration, there was the same issue. There's a large number of dangerous criminal aliens in sanctuary jurisdictions. And when you don't have that cooperation, you just cannot allow them to be immune from prosecution and immune from the enforcement of our immigration laws. And so they are absolutely guilty of harboring, and that is an offense. And just because you're a public official, you have a greater responsibility, I would say, to uphold the rule of law if you yourself are an elected official. And so I'm thrilled to hear that out of Tom Homan, and I think he means it. I know Tom, and he doesn't say things that he doesn't mean. So I think it'll just take one, and maybe the Denver mayor will be that example, and others will start to fall in line because I don't think I want to spend any time behind a jail cell for protecting criminal aliens.
Another piece here that's worth citing and emphasizing is Tom Homan has been trying to clarify a lot of the left-wing hysteria about the role that the military might play in all of this. It's not not unheard of for the military to insist in border enforcement efforts or in other things within the country. They just can't be used as actual law enforcement, right? I mean, the point is that the military would come in a support role, whether that's transportation or administration. Meanwhile, that frees up the actual Border Patrol agents and ICE agents to do their jobs. Do I have that right, Rob?
Absolutely right. And this has been done before, so it's not that novel. And the hysterics from the media, you think they would look back on how they misrepresented President Trump's first term, how they've misrepresented the immigration issue for years and years and years, and see that the American people gave President Trump an enormously clear mandate to secure the border and enforce our immigration laws. So mass deportations are only controversial to the far left media. The reality is mass deportations are required because the Biden-Harris administration allowed mass illegal immigration over 4 years. And so really, you're not seeing President Trump and his administration come up with new laws unilaterally. They're just simply going to actually apply the laws that are on the books. And when you really simplify it to that matter, you realize that it's actually been administrations like the Biden-Harris administration, like the Obama administration and others before then, who they're the ones that are extreme and radical for ignoring the laws.
Yes.
And that's what the reality is.
Yeah, and for crafting new ways for foreign nationals to pour into our country, like via an app, for instance, the CBP1 app. You just fill out some information and the Biden administration will traffic you in. That's the way that they've been conducting business. But just to dwell on the point of the use of the military, the Biden administration has deployed active duty personnel to serve in support roles for Customs and Border Protection. So this is not, they've done that with thousands of National Guard personnel to our southern border to again, that in that case, it's to assist bringing all these illegals into the country. But it wouldn't be especially novel for the Trump administration to get the military helping Customs and Border Protection. They're just going to do it at a different scale.
Well, it's exactly right. And again, you rightly identified it. It's apparently permissible to use the military on the intake process, the care and intake and resettlement into American communities. But utilizing them on the outflow process, apparently that is unacceptable. And you're right. If it's appropriate to use it in one direction, it is equally appropriate to use them in the opposite direction. And really, they're just doing all of those logistical and operational things and administrative responsibilities so that every single badge and gun, boots on the ground officer can be out there doing that. It is a misuse of our understaffed ICE officers to be in an office typing up a report. There are other people that can do that type of stuff. Just let ICE do its job, and you will see deportations go up. You will see apprehensions go up. You will see dangerous criminal aliens removed from the streets, and you'll see our communities get safer. Our border will get more secure. The inflow will decrease, and you'll finally see the regaining of the sovereignty of our country.
Rob Law is on the phone with us. He's from the America First Policy Institute. Handles Homeland Security and immigration there for them. Rob, I want to ask you about this big Georgia case resolving yesterday. Jose Ibarra was found guilty of the assault and murder of Laken Riley, and he's been sentenced to life in prison without parole. All of that, just a completely heartbreaking scene in the courtroom yesterday as Laken Riley's family was speaking up ahead of the sentencing, just about the daughter that they had lost. Now, just to go over the details again on some of the basics, Jose Ibarra entered near El Paso, Texas back in September of 2022. He was taken into custody by the Biden administration, instantly paroled and released for, quote, further processing. About a year later, in August of 2023, he's arrested by the New York City Police Department and charged with, quote, acting in a manner to injure a child less than 17 and a motor vehicle license violation. The next month, he's flown at federal taxpayer expense into Georgia, and it's in February that the man we now know as a Venezuelan gang member, Jose Ibarra, that he brutally murders Laken Riley when she goes out for a morning jog. And that brings us to today. As you look at this case, how many preventable moments do you see along the way?
Frankly, I lost count, and it's so tragic. This was, of all of the illegal alien crime that was preventable, this might be just the clearest example. Laken Riley was failed time and time and time again, and it all started with the catch and release policies at the southern border. Her murderer is not one of the 1.8 million gotaways who successfully evaded the Border Patrol, found his way into the country, and then came about Laken Riley and murdered her in a very grotesque and brutal way. This was somebody that was in Border Patrol custody and was ordered release because of the reckless policies of open borders and catch and release. There is no way those Border Patrol agents wanted to release this guy. He was unvetted. They had no idea who he was. And if they had detained him, which is what the law requires, they would have figured out, obviously he's here unlawfully. He crossed the border. And then you would have figured out that he's a member of a Venezuelan gang, and you would have had him detained and deported. That's exactly what would have happened under the Trump administration. And yet it was essentially an open invitation. And then you had these failed progressive prosecutors that refused to enforce certain civil laws and other criminal laws as well. They downgrade offenses as well with the goal of getting criminals back onto the streets. And all that does is enable them and embolden them to commit more and more and more heinous crimes. And that's exactly what you saw here. It started with one level of offense, then another, and at each of those instances, he should have either been in Border Patrol, ICE custody, or should have been in New York custody, or Athens, Georgia custody. He should not have been out on that path when she went for that run that morning.
But just the final insult in terms of the federal government's involvement here is that they paid for his flight from New York to Georgia. They sent him to the location of the murder right after he came out of jail in New York. What makes me worried is that this is a high-profile case that we're all aware of because of the loss of life, because we lost Laken Riley. But how many other cases like this are there all across the country that we're not aware of?
Oh, there's so many, and obviously there's been a few more tragic examples, like Jocelyn Ngari and Rachel Marin, things of that sort. And so, like, while Laken Riley sort of captured the media attention, that was not a one-off. There have been instances of this for numerous years, and frankly, another reason that we don't really know the full extent of it is there are so many of these jurisdictions that refuse to disclose the immigration status of the perpetrator, of the murderer, the rapist, the arsonist, the thief, whatever the case may be. And so the actual problem is probably leaps and bounds worse than even we realize that it is.
Yeah, we have a very dishonest media that doesn't want to tell us the truth about any of this. And in fact, I saw some headlines. I don't have them in front of me, but they're attacking Republicans for bringing so much attention to Laken Riley's murder, when, of course, one of the critical reasons Trump was just reelected was because people don't want to see that happen anymore, and that's why they brought him back. It's the most obvious thing in the world, but the media doesn't want you to know that. Rob Law from America First Policy Institute. Sir, thank you for your time today. Good to talk to you.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.
That's Rob Law, and he's a former senior policy advisor to President Trump.